All right. Good morning, everybody. It is October 16th, 2023, 8:46 a.m. I missed you guys. I hope you guys missed me. It is another day in the market open, another day and another week starting in the equity markets. This week, I think, is going to be very, very interesting. I'm happy to be back. Thank you all for being here because we've got earnings that are officially starting. Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Tesla, Netflix. These are going to be some of the biggest companies reporting earnings. So we got a lot of earnings to cover. On top of that, we've got the 10-year today taking a little bit higher, along with gas prices up just a little bit higher than where they, well, actually not. I mean, it's a little bit because it's 0.42% up, but we're above the $90 range. So we're at $91.27. So the impact on gas prices, I think, is going to be important this week, along with the 10-year being at 4.7 if you round up now, 4.687. So below from 4.9, but still up a little bit more. And then on top of that, I don't know how much news you guys have been watching over the weekend, but I have been just attached, absolutely attached to what is going on in Israel. We have a ground offensive that is continuing to start. We have a little bit of a delay because of the rain and the weather, so that's giving more time for Gaza residents to move from the north to the south. But we have now 199 hostages that are taken. There are so many more details that are emerging. We're going to have a lot to break down. But one thing I do want to say is that as I've been going through the news, it truly has been heartbreaking seeing some of the stuff that has happened. Hamas wore body cameras, and they basically released all the footage as marketing and propaganda for what they did. And you see some of the body camera footage and what they've actually done. And you just imagine yourself in that situation, in that house, kind of like, hopefully they don't find you. And it's just absolutely devastating. So we have a lot to cover there and a lot to see what's going on in the world of the stock market and how that's going to be affected from a geopolitical perspective. Happy Monday. Thank you all for being here. Let's get into it. Joseph, Kraft Jan, Ray, Miami Ren, Bryant Robinson, Missy, Anthony, John Schwartzbeck, Imnop, thank you for being here. Roy, Jude Jr., Hakun Lee, Vincent Zhang, TJ, what's up? Tessa Best, David Luong, Johnny Mac, Monty, SJ, Sethi Roth, Garcia, what's up? Zocol, John Stevens, Tobor, Dan, Meliscu, Palantir, double downs on what? We're going to start with Palantir as our first subject in just a second. David, Spanish Guitar. I love that name, Spanish Guitar. Good morning, Mitt. Do you make guitar videos? And do you play Spanish songs? That's awesome. Noland, Jazz, would Palantir help IDF? We're definitely going to talk about that. Sasky Rose, Wayne, Tony G, Zator, Carter Deli. All right, let's get into the market open. So first thing I want to discuss is Palantir. And they made some news over the weekend with what they decided to do. And honestly, some people hated it. Some people loved it. But this is the news that they chose to go with. And I'll give my thoughts on it. And then I want to see what you guys think in the chat as well. So yesterday, Palantir, on a Sunday morning edition of the New York Times, bought an ad that's pretty 4 words. Palantir stands with Israel. That's pretty much it. This is a front full page ad in the New York Times. And from my research, this ad will cost them close to $100,000, if not a little bit more than that. So, it might actually be more because, inflation, things have changed since the articles I looked at came out with this. But a full front page ad in the New York Times, it costs a decent amount of money. And it's not really to convert people. Like, you're not going to expect people to start buying Palantir because of this ad. This is to make a statement. So, for example, Meta bought full page ads in the Sunday edition of the New York Times, which is one of the most widely read editions, back in 2018 when Apple was implementing iOS 14. So when Apple was basically gutting small businesses the chance to be able to do advertising with their OTT updates, and Facebook was like, what, this is ridiculous. Are you serious? we need the data to be able to do targeting. Apple started buying full page ads in Wall Street Journal and the New York Times to try to get the more professional business class of people, executives, to realize that Apple is not playing a fair game. These are people that would potentially buy the stock. These are people that would potentially sign, $100 million deals in terms of advertising with Meta. So that's what this ad spot is reserved for. It's reserved for people that want to make a statement, not really people that want to make business. Some people are like, oh, this is a waste of money. You could think it's a waste of money, but for Palantir, it's more so a question of how do we make a statement around us standing with Israel? Because obviously not everyone saw their tweet. And from my understanding, their tweet was the only thing that was like the statement, right? And us in the Palantir community saw the tweet, but outside of that, other people didn't. So this was the advertisement. The source ended up deleting their post, but the source is it's Francesca Craig. She works at Palantir. And even though she deleted her post, she posted it again. So I don't know why she deleted it, but she ended up posting it again. So it doesn't really matter. But this is real, right? This is a real New York Times paper that had happened. One of the chief advisors to Alex Karp, who also talks about, who's also on the council of the U.S.-China Relations Board, also tweeted this. He's a big supporter of Palantir, and he, was like, this is a good advertisement that they put out with the New York Times. Look, my opinion on it is at the end of the day, they are standing with Israel. They are siding with Israel, and they believe that the force that Israel is going to use in Gaza to ultimately eliminate Hamas is a good thing. And that's why they're doing this. The bear case for this, and let me talk about the bear case, right? The bear case for this ad is that what Israel ends up doing in Gaza becomes one of the largest humanitarian crises ever. That is the bear case, because then the public perception of Israel will not be a country that's defending itself. It'll be a country that's gaining a humanitarian crisis. I think that's yet to be seen. Quite frankly, all of the research that I've done says, yes, there's going to be some level of a humanitarian crisis here. I don't think it's going to be as extreme as the media is kind of painting it, especially because Israel's giving a lot of warnings to get people in Gaza to leave. Israel isn't even going to be in Gaza for the next couple of days because of the rain. So there's actually time for people to get out of there. And then on top of that, this is just like objectively true. If you've seen some of the news, Hamas is stopping some of those citizens from leaving because they're using them as human shields. I'm not saying everything Israel is doing is perfect, but it's definitely not, the type of ethnic cleansing of Gaza citizens that the media is trying to paint them out to be. That doesn't seem like what's happening to me, given the evidence I'm seeing right now. And as a result of that, I think Palantir taking this stance with Israel, it's a definitive stance to the world that, look, Hamas cannot be a organization that survives after what they've done. And as a result of that, they're doubling down on their message to stand with Israel. What does this mean for the stock? We're actually going to take a look at some evidence in a little bit around defense stocks and how they are going to continue to potentially have a restocking cycle, which means there's going to be a lot more potentially upside in terms of demand coming for defense stocks. But in terms of the stock, look, if the IDF would be using something like Palantir, the Israeli Defense Force, then that's going to be obviously more demand for Palantir as well. Imnop says, I don't understand why more people don't stand against Hamas, period. I don't think more people are pro-killing innocent people, Israeli or Palestinians. Yeah, and look, I've done a lot of research over the weekend. I've truly, I've watched a lot of videos trying to understand the origins of Hamas. Let me ask a question in the chat. Do you guys know about the Munich massacre? Like, that's something I discovered over the weekend. This was the 1972 Olympics in Munich, where Hamas terrorists killed 11 Israeli Jewish Olympic athletes. And the Olympics just went on as normal. They took like a day of silence and I was just like, what, bro? That's like, I didn't even know about that history. So what Hamas has been doing for a long time, I personally am starting to think this is another Al-Qaeda ISIS situation where you cannot let this organization continue to thrive. You can't let it survive. And more importantly, remember, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama came with peace settlements for Israel and Palestine, basically getting to the point to form a two-party state. At the last minute, both Palestinian prime ministers decided to walk away. And so when you've tried to create peace deals for the past 20 years and they've walked away, and then you leave the Gaza Strip in 2005 and give it to Hamas, and then Hamas is governing it for the past 21 years, and they're basically starving their citizens, not allowing any economic mobility, all of that stuff. It's just a tough situation to imagine that Hamas should continue to survive. Saw the movie in 10th grade. I remember. So this is the first time I'm learning about it for the first time as well. And so, look, at the end of the day, I don't agree with everything Israel is doing in the Gaza Strip, and I don't think America even does. In fact, over the weekend, America said, look, we have to minimize civilian casualty as much as we can. However, if there's a right or wrong, I don't think Hamas is on the side of right. And I don't think Israel is completely on the side of wrong for trying to defend themselves. Again, I think if you watch some of that first-person POV footage of Hamas terrorists basically carrying out executions, and just imagine yourself in that situation, then multiply it times 1,300, because that's the amount of people that were killed in Israel just for being Jewish. And then on top of that, you got 199 hostages, 27 of them, I believe, being American. It's 60 Minutes actually on CNBC on CBS did a great piece on it yesterday, and CNN also did a great piece on talking to one of the survivors who her head kind of looked like a bush, right? Her head was kind of puffy, so she stayed in the bushes and the terrorist was like in front of her, but he didn't recognize that she was a human being because her head was like she had kind of like a bushy head, so it blended in with the grass. So like he's standing right in front of her. He just shot and killed someone else, and he's getting ready to kill whoever else he can find, and he just can't recognize that it's her. And she stayed there for like 8 hours. I mean, like the type of shit is just insane to imagine yourself in that situation. And so as a result of that, Palantir has doubled down. As Felicia said, there are very, very rocky roads ahead, and it's going to be tough. Look, and I agree with you as well, Persian Prince. Disproportionate military strikes is not defense. I agree. And so this is the problem with war, right? Not everything Israel is doing is amazing, but Hamas also started to get to incite all of this stuff. And that's the problem with war, because in a war, a lot of people die that don't have to die, that aren't supposed to die. And so at the end of the day, Palantir has decided to side with Israel, and they're going to be ultimately on the side of the company that they believe is going to be playing a crucial role here, or the country that's going to be playing the right role. Now, if we take a look at Palantir stock, it is down today in the pre-markets, down about 0.80%. It's at $17.22. Obviously, 2022 is down significantly from 1840. I think the market has to make a decision this week. The market has to make a decision of, do you believe that Palantir continues to get a premium because of the defense stock sort of momentum, right? Do you believe the market deserves to give Palantir a premium because of the war in Israel? Or does Palantir come back down? Remember, the reason Palantir jumped last week is for two things. We got the $250 million contract confirmed. Wall Street liked that. And then on top of that, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, et cetera, they went up. Let's actually take a look at Lockheed Martin right now in the pre-market. Lockheed Martin is up another 0.78%. Again, it's already up a lot since last week. And Raytheon is also up in the pre-market. The reason Lockheed Martin and Raytheon are up, and we're going to take a look at this in a little bit, is because the market is perceiving that there is going to be a lot of demand for military artillery. It's becoming pretty evident that there's going to need ammunition, guns, all that stuff, and it's going to be restocking. I mean, we're sending $2 billion worth of aid from Congress to Israel in the next couple of days, $2 to $3 billion already. So those defense stocks that build the actual things are definitely going to be getting a little bit of a boost. Now, in the context of Palantir, the market has to make a decision. Do you believe what's going on in Israel will be inextricably tied to Palantir software the same way that Ukraine was? In Ukraine, we found out a couple weeks after the Ukraine war started that Palantir was on the ground. I think we're going to have to find out, is Palantir being used by the IDF and the use case, in my opinion, would be targeting. Targeting software would be one of the main use cases for Palantir being used with the IDF. We're going to see in the next couple of weeks if that's the case, and the market's going to have to make a decision if they think that's the case. And then we'll have to, decide from there. Ultimately, that's what the market's going to have to decide. But until the market ends up deciding that, we're going to see a little bit of a decline. Now, the reason I think Palantir is selling off a little bit, quite frankly, is just because it was up a lot last week. It might reverse in the as soon as the market opens, but we will see where it goes from there. All right, we will see what happens with Palantir in just a little bit. Ultimately, Israel is doubling down on their ground offensive. Palantir is doubling down with Israel. I know a lot of people will disagree. A lot of people may agree. At the end of the day, you can't talk about stocks without talking about some of the geopolitical things that's happening in the world of stocks. And from an objective standpoint, the reason Palantir is standing with Israel is because they believe Israel is getting rid of Hamas. You can either disagree with the perspective on if you think Hamas is not a terrorist organization, Hamas is freedom fighters, Hamas is going up against the colonial apartheid state that is Israel. That is one perspective. You are totally entitled to feel that way. And then there is another feeling that people are entitled also to feel, that Israel has been attacked and that if we don't get rid of Hamas, there is never going to be any type of freedom for Gazan citizens. Those are the two perspectives that are out there. Those are the two perspectives I'm presenting based on what's going on in the world. Palantir is supporting Israel, and that's the perspective they're ultimately sticking with. All right, moving on from there. So that was Palantir. We'll probably get back to that a little bit more. Thank you all for being here. Let's get a little bit of updates on the macro. So we're seeing the 10-year tick up a little bit, along with gas prices get higher as well. So let's bring up the 10-year right here. 91.27 on the 10-year. 91.27 on gas prices. Could you imagine 91.27 on the 10-year? $91.27. Brent financials, these are the futures. Now, remember, over the past 5 days, we were at 3.79. We're up 3.79%. Over the past month, we're down 2.77%. So gas is up just a little bit, even though gas is down for the month. At the top of the month, we were at 94.36. This was the top September 27th. We came all the way back down to 84, which was a really nice decline. And I even saw it in my prices. I saw it like $3.25 a gallon. I know some people are saying they're getting $2.70 a gallon, which are like prices I haven't seen since like 2019, 2020. But now we are up at 91.18. I think the main reason for this is because the United States has imposed harsher sanctions on Russia, particularly on crude oil being produced from Russia. That happened on Friday. That's what spiked us up to $89. We were up about 2% that day. And now we were at 91 because it doesn't seem like that's going away anytime soon. One of the bull cases for gas coming down was us importing more oil from Iran. This was actually discussed at the end of September. We were like, oh, if we put less sanctions on Iran and Venezuela, we're going to get more gas. Now, given what's going on with Israel, and this is why this geopolitical conflict actually impacts a lot of different things around stocks, is, well, if we don't really think Iran is the best actor and we think Iran kind of played a role in ultimately setting up Hamas, and maybe reports that Hamas had $150 million of funding over the past couple of years. Where did that $150 million come from? Because it definitely didn't come from Israel. It didn't come from Gaza, right? Like, it had to come from somewhere. And so if that ended up coming from Iran or Hezbollah, then you could imagine that we don't want to import more oil from Iran. So that's going to be a sticky situation when the United States tries to figure out how to get these gas prices to come down, because where are we getting that supply from? And on top of that, U.S. 10-year Treasury is 4.683%. This is tipping to the upside. We were at 4.5 over the weekend or on Friday, and we ticked back up to 4.681. If you guys round up, then it'll be at 4.7. S&P 500 is actually green in the pre-market. So S&P 500 is 433, up 0.53%, while the US 10-year is up and gas is up. So it's going to be really interesting to see where the market turns as we open, whether we continue to go up or we capitulate a little bit more from the bottom. And we're going to see from there. Okay, so that is gas and that is oil. Now, having said that, this week is going to be really interesting as well, because this week we have some major earnings. We're going to get through a couple of companies right now in terms of what's going on, particularly one that has a bankruptcy. But we have Tesla, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and Netflix this week. And we're going to do previews on all of them. I think the earnings are not going to be bad, especially for some of the bigger banks, given what we saw with JP Morgan, Citi, and Wells Fargo. Remember, those three banks did phenomenally well on Friday, and we didn't expect them to do that well. And the market really liked it. We've got Truist this week. We've got a lot of companies that are going to be reporting this week, a lot of regionals. And the market's going to have to decide if these are good. Do we set up for this potential end-of-year rally if tech stocks end up doing well based on the banks doing well? This is the news we're getting today. Rite Aid has filed for bankruptcy amid slowing sales, opioid litigation. So we saw this news kind of coming a couple of weeks ago that Rite Aid was getting ready to shut down. Do you guys use Rite Aid in the United States? There was a Rite Aid near my house when we lived in apartments for like 10 years. And I used to go to Rite Aid all the time. So it's kind of like a Walgreens, but not as good as a Walgreens. And I think it had a pharmacy component to it. One of the biggest problems with Walgreens makes $144 billion a year and they're not profitable. So you would imagine that if Walgreens can't get profitable, then Rite Aid, which is relatively the same thing, is also not going to be that easy to get profitable. During its most recent quarter ended June 3rd, revenue fell to $5.65 billion, down from $6 billion. So they lost about $400 million. Its net loss widened to $306 million. So revenue was down $400 million and they were losing $5.65 a share, which is about $300 million, compared with a net loss of $110 million a year ago. So they basically doubled their net income losses. And that's just not easy to do as a public company. As a result of a tough quarter, Rite Aid lowered its fiscal 2024 outlook as it warned investors to expect to lose $650 to $680 million. Plummeting demand for COVID vaccines and testing, a membership reduction in the company's prescription drug plan, and a loss of customers from its Elixir pharmacy benefits have contributed to a slowdown in revenue and a struggling drug chain. This is one of those companies going bankrupt that I think it's actually okay. It's not like, oh my God, this is a sign that the economy is going bad or that, consumers are doing wrong or anything like that. It's more so just, look, it's a company that's struggling. There's not that much demand. COVID was a boost and now COVID is gone. So things are going to fall and that's okay. This is just capitalism, right? Some companies end up having to fail and it is what it is. So I wouldn't think it's necessarily a problem with the consumer or signaling any weakness in the overall economy, because Walgreens is doing fine with their sales. It's more so a question of people just don't want to shop at Rite Aid, which is reasonable that people don't want to shop at Rite Aid. And so that's what we got going on in Rite Aid. On top of that, you've got other companies like Pfizer that are showing massive weak demand for their COVID-19 vaccines and some other vaccines, which makes sense because, I mean, a lot of people aren't getting vaxxed anymore because they already got vaxxed or they just don't want to get vaxxed anymore. And as a result of that, you're seeing Pfizer at lows that it was at before COVID. Up in the pre-market a little bit, 0.59%, 32.11, right now at 32.30. If we look at the chart for Pfizer, this is really interesting. So we got to 90, here was the run up. Okay. So in 2021, we were at 57.95. That was the top from a low of 25.14 in January. So a nice, basically 2.2x right there. And as we're seeing it come down on decreased demand, we're seeing Pfizer go down to 32.42. Again, something that's more natural. If demand is slowing down, then you're going to imagine the stock price starts slowing down, especially if it's uniquely tied to drug prices versus a problem or a crack in the economy writ large. Okay, let's get a preview on Tesla earnings and who other than our good friend Ross Gerber to give us the rundown on what he thinks might be happening in the world of Tesla, and if we need to have a little bit more advertising, because I think that's going to be a big question on Tesla. Let's take a look at this. Tesla earnings will be on Wednesday.
Daily dose of Tesla. They report their numbers on Wednesday, but ahead of that, listen to this. We know that Tesla is the undisputed king of EVs, but a new report shows that the size of the crown might be shrinking a bit. Tesla owned half of the U.S. EV market in the third quarter, but that is down 12% from the beginning of the year. Still, its closest competitor, Ford, is about 1 million miles away with just about 7%. Now, Tesla CEO Elon Musk has been a controversial figure the last few years, even more so since he bought X, formerly known as Twitter. So could that actually be a reason that their little corner of the pie, the auto pie, is shrinking, or is it really just competition? Joining us now is Gerber Kawasaki President and CEO Ross Gerber. Ross, I got to tell you, about pretty much everybody in my town owns at least one Tesla, I feel like. And I've had people literally say, I love Tesla. I'm not going to buy one or another one because of Elon Musk. I'm sure you've heard the same thing. Do you think this is a slight reason they've had to cut costs?
Well, I mean, honestly, I've heard a lot worse than that. You know, people actually despise him, you know. Yeah, unfortunately. and you know, in its core market like California, where Tesla sells a ton of cars, you know, I don't think Elon's doing anything to help sell cars. So that said, you know, we also promised we'd have some sort of real advertising, and we've seen some stabs at it, but really no real commitment to advertise. And this is definitely hurting Tesla. In my parking lot, for example, in my office, my two partners, one of them owns a Rivian now, and one of them owns the new BMW i7. It parks next to my Plaid, and it used to be all Teslas. So I think we're seeing that across the board. But just the same, Tesla's still 50% of a market that's growing by 50%. So this isn't so bad.
Yeah, it is. Listen, they didn't have to advertise forever, because guys like you who would buy a Tesla and be like, my God, you got to drive my car, or check this out. It's unbelievable. It rides, whatever. Sort of word of mouth to friends. Now there's competition, right? Now there's actual real competition in the market. Why don't they advertise?
Well, that's a great question, because actually, like, I don't actually think the competition is that bad for Tesla from the EV side. What I think it is that early adopters of EV technology all have EVs now, or Teslas. So really you have to expand the market for EVs, and we're seeing that market expand rapidly, but we're still talking out really small. It's like 7 or 8% of the overall car market. But if you actually ask somebody why they don't own an EV or a Tesla, the answers are absurd. There's there's a big lack of understanding and education, and a ton of misinformation that's put out about how great it is to own an EV and how superior they are as an automobile. But Tesla needs to get that messaging out to consumers that don't really know much about EVs. And that's, I think, what's hurting them.
Okay, now this is obviously a ongoing debate that has been going on in the world of Tesla. Put in the chat what you think to me, or what you think, so I can read it, around if you think earnings is going to crap the bed. Because I've heard a lot of takes. of people, even Tesla bulls, saying, look, earnings is just not going to go well given some of the issues that we have. And I kind of think that might be the contrarian thesis to imagine that earnings is actually going to do okay. Here's our boy Gary Black saying, Tesla can keep cutting price, but if 90% of Americans still think Teslas cost more than comparable ICE vehicles, we have no clue about how easy Teslas are to charge, have range anxiety, don't know about full self-driving, blah, blah, blah. If they don't know how safe it is, etc., then further price cuts do absolutely no good. He's saying, I'm not asking that Tesla spend money on advertising that it could spend on product quality, engineers, or battery technology. I'm asking that Tesla take 5 to 10% of the billions it will spend to cut price. Every 1K cut is worth $2 billion in 2024, and try advertising to educate non-EV users. I don't know. I mean, the whole advertising thing to me is really interesting. Like, do we really think Tesla buying TV ads on the Super Bowl is going to massively increase demand or decrease range anxiety or kind of educate the consumer about why their Toyota or Ford F-150 is not good? Like, I want to believe that it's that easy of a solution, but I also think that a lot of people just might not care. So I could be wrong on that. But if Gary's right on that and Ross is right on that advertising is actually going to happen, then I think on earnings, there definitely going to be some analyst questions around what's going on with advertising. Are we actually getting closer to finding a solution where advertising is real? And if we do that advertising, then potentially that could stop the cuts that dramatically, because you don't need cuts. You just need more advertising. Matt says, Tesla's my biggest position and I'm scared for earnings. I think a lot of Tesla bulls have kind of said the same thing here. June says, I think they are cutting prices to increase affordability, and now people are seeing all the price cuts and waiting for them to maybe cut more or for others to cut prices, but they need to advertise costs. And Inbound says, it's insane that Tesla don't advertise. I believe it's spite by Elon. Elon said he would start, right? When Meet Kevin asked him at that conference, they was like, hey, will Elon start? And he said, yeah, we're going to try advertising. And to their credit, we did find Google search ads that were sponsored. Right. So like if you click on it, it says sponsored. So it's not an organic search ad. So Tesla was paying for that, but it's definitely not like a massive TV campaign being shown on all the on prime time. They're not advertising on CNBC. Right. And that's probably Elon being like, I'm never giving my money to CNBC. So yeah, they definitely haven't done that. And if they start doing that, I think it'll be really interesting to see where they go from there. I think Elon believes that Tesla doesn't need ads. Yeah. I think that as well. A lot of people don't know about the benefits of owning an EV. I agree. I mean, that's even my dad himself. He's thinking of getting a new car and he's really doesn't understand the Tesla story. I mean, he owns some Tesla stock, but he doesn't really get the car as much as he needs to. But see, I don't know if you could target my dad because he doesn't watch TV. He watches Facebook Reels. Like literally, that's what he watches. So I even that, like, but personally, my dad, I don't know how they would target them unless they have a full-fledged marketing campaign across every medium of distribution. And I don't know if Tesla would do that. So, I mean, that's going to be a really interesting question around what they do. Tesla does advertise. They are not doing mainstream media ads, which is what people think is advertising. I agree, DRK, but I think mainstream media advertising is where a lot of the money is, especially for like the average consumer. Like, for example, I was at a Chipotle last week. There was a woman who was with me. I held the door for her. And so like we just started talking. And she was like, she was like probably like 60 or 70 years old. She was like, I never had Chipotle, but I saw an ad about it. And so I'm here. And I tried to ask her, like, what? I literally was like, where did you see the ad? And she's like, oh, on some like daytime TV show. And I was like, wow, like fucking ads worked. Like I was shocked. I was like, you really came to Chipotle for the first time ever because you saw an ad on TV. So, I mean, to reach that demographic, which is like the 40 to 60-year-olds, mainstream television is still where they're consuming content. Abbas says Tesla earnings will be down in Q3 because Tesla clearly indicated earnings would be down. They literally said this. Factors are retooling for the new models. Yeah, I think that as well, which also might mean the stock might not take a hit. Let's take a look at the stock real quick right now, because the expectations are baked in that the price cuts and the factory retooling and the production estimates or the delivery estimates that missed maybe is not going to be the worst thing in the world for Tesla. Tesla right now at $250. Still amazing that it's stuck at 250 and it hasn't gone to like that 220, 230 range, which it was close to doing a couple weeks ago, but it just rebounded pretty aggressively now at $250.19 in the pre-market. Palantir in the pre-market down at $17.24. We've got Truist up 1.2%, $28.75. Wells Fargo is up. JP Morgan is up. Unity is up a little bit. And S&P 500, $433.99, basically $434 in the pre-market, up 0.58%. So earnings will definitely matter for Tesla. And if we go to Netflix a little bit, Netflix is at $355. This one has definitely collapsed from about $410 in the pre-markets down to 0.05 as well. Jittery says, I'm 60 years old and I only watch sports on TV. Yeah. And I imagine there's a lot of people like you. The thing is, she was 60. I agree, but I'm just saying that population from 40 to 60, it seems like they're watching TV, man. Like the fact that she got to Chipotle because of a TV ad, and she just liked how the food looked, right? Like it's been so long since I saw an ad where I liked how the food looked, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go get it, you know? And that's what's happening on TV. Okay, to do a little bit of a preview on Netflix, I have no idea what's going to happen to Netflix, quite frankly. The only good catalyst this quarter for Netflix was the actor union deal that they officially confirmed. There was not any new content this quarter. And correct me if I'm wrong, but if there was new content, it was definitely not the content that was going to, make everybody talk about it. There wasn't another Wednesday, wasn't another Squid Game. So, I mean, Netflix was pretty boring. This quarter. It was at $4.53 on September 5th. I mean, look at that decline. It was at $453 a share September 5th. Now we're at $352. So if you bought Netflix in September, I mean, you've had a pretty aggressive decline, which might mean that earnings have room to run. All these stocks that have fallen down, they have some momentum in them because the price action is baked in of them being so low. Like, do we really want to send Netflix to like $200 or something, right? $299. That would be pretty insane. But I don't think there was any catalyst for Netflix this past quarter. There wasn't any interesting. And I don't think they have any catalyst coming up because now they have to start making content. And until the content's made and starts getting distributed, it's not really going to start coming out. Theo, greetings to all. Happy investing this week. Theo, thank you for being here. One Piece was a big hit for Netflix. That's anime, right? I don't know if that was the big hits. I mean, Suits was definitely, it was like a replay value hit, but it wasn't really original, I would say. Netflix going at 315. Oh man. Netflix is in a pretty tough situation. Again, only because I think they haven't had any new content that's like going to get people super excited about the stock. Samuel says, Amit, I filmed a video on you yesterday. I started a series called Create and Review where I reviewed the YouTube accounts of content creators to learn for myself. Hope that's cool. That's awesome, Samuel. Hopefully that show gets picked up by Netflix one day because that'd be more interesting than anything Netflix has on their on their catalog. There's nothing that interesting to me on Netflix. Dude, I tried to go on Netflix the other day and I just I think I spent 20 minutes searching and I couldn't find a single thing. I was just like, I can never buy this stock. I can't do it. I get there's a need for premium content and people are like need to that sit back content, but I just I can't vibe. There's like nothing. I mean, think about everything going on with Israel and Hamas, right? All this news we're getting this week. Not even a single documentary that Netflix could have that popped up showcasing the history of everything going on. Like even that. And so in the like what is important this week? Everything in the world of, at least to me, Israel and Palestine. I wanted to know like as much history as I could learn about it. The Munich massacre, that thing I learned about yesterday. Netflix should have a bunch of documentaries. I'm sure they could easily get that content from somewhere, license it from somewhere, and they should be putting it on the home feed. That's stuff that people would be interested in, I would imagine, right now. But it's not there. So I think the lack of user-generated content is just going to be a very, very tough world for Netflix to survive in as we get into a more content-heavy age. Okay, so that was the Netflix stuff. We have a new member of the S&P 500, folks. A new member has replaced Activision because that has been overtaken by Microsoft. Any guesses on who they are? This is a new member. They are known for their leggings. I think. I haven't bought any of their products, but I think that's what they're known for. They're known for their leggings. Lululemon has joined the S&P 500. They're up 6.4% on the day, $401. You guys got it, Lululemon. They're replacing Activision Blizzard. So the S&P 500 is rebalancing a little bit. This is what will happen with Palantir in 2024 when they become GAAP profitable in Q3. Some company will have to leave and Palantir will be added into the S&P 500. So a bunch of fund managers today have to buy Lululemon. As you can see, it's up 6% on the day. The main reason is because obviously there's a lot of buying pressure or a lot of anticipatory buying pressure so that people are getting the stock before it goes up. And today will actually be interesting to see how the market reacts to Lululemon because it might give a signal for what happens to Palantir. Like it's up 7% in the pre-market. It might be up maybe 10, 15% for the day if there's just a ton of buy-side pressure, or it might sell off and, people might take the profits. Market cap at $47 billion. Lululemon is a very interesting company. Price of sales of 5.4. I've never bought their products, but I do know a lot of people that are obsessed with their products, similar to Gymshark. Gymshark is for men and women, but Lululemon is kind of more exclusively for women in terms of wearing products that are in the gym. So it's another retailer that's going public, that's getting added to the S&P 500. And the good thing about this is that that continues to show that the consumer is strong, that people are going to keep buying these products, even if, the economy is not doing that well. People are ready to buy their stuff. I'm on their website right now, and a pair of pants is $128. Okay, now I know why Lululemon is getting added into the S&P 500. Yeah, it is for men too. Yeah, this is why this is the type of product I would never buy. But look at this. A crew neck is $118. I did not know their margins were this. I'm telling you that crew neck does not cost them more than $20 to make. Maybe $20, especially if they're making it in mass. It's definitely made in Bangladesh or China. It does not cost them $118. Like, I did not know Lululemon had the brand authority to have that much of a margin, quite frankly. Now it's obvious why. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. So that's just a lot of money, bro. That's a lot of money. Look at these. These pants are $128. These leggings are $118, or these gym pants, whatever you call them. That's why they're in the S&P 500. That's why they're doing well. That's 120 is nothing to a doctor. Yeah, I guess, but I mean, look, this is why I love America. This is why we need consumerism. I'm not going to be that type of person that buys those products, but we need people in the United States that will. Bro, I saw an Instagram reel yesterday of like a guy's average spend in New York City. This dude spent $2,500 on, wait for it, Ubers. That's how I knew we're not really in a recession. This guy can spend $2,500 on Uber. Like I get you live in New York City. I get you don't want to have a car, but $2,500 on Uber. Go ahead, bro. Be my guest. Please keep buying. Please keep buying. We need people like that. I mean, we need those consumers. Like, we need them. I'm not one of those consumers, but we need those consumers. We need them. And apparently America has a lot of them. Uber right now at 43.81, up 0.76%. Because those people, the more they continue buying, the more they continue propping up the economy, even if they're not going to be financially literate or secure. That's fine, but get this economy going. Keep buying. Keep buying. $20, but like $3 a piece. Yeah, it's probably $3 a sweater. It's just insane. Lulu and Uber is money. Yeah. It's like I was at the Apple store this weekend. I went to get the Apple I didn't went to go to get the Apple headphones. I just went to try them on. The Apple Max headphones are $549. I'm just like I get they look stylish, but do they really deserve to be that expensive? I don't know. And granted, there's a lot of people that are just willing to pay for it. And that's it. Let's get an update on these bond yields that we have. The economy, we have 7 minutes until the market open. Here's a take on why the economy can prove to live with 4.5% to 5% yields on bonds. Right now, we're at 4.7. Most people want to see us get down to 4.2, 4.3 for the economy to start having equities move higher. Here's a more contrarian take for why the economy can live with these rising bond yields.
In the meantime, earnings season picking up steam this week with more than 50 S&P 500 companies and 5 Dow components set to report results. Joining us right now is Ed Yardeni. He's the president of Yardeni Research. How are you setting yourself up this morning, or maybe even I should have said last week, ahead of everything we've already started to hear on Friday?
Well, to tell you the truth, after hearing that report that you just we all just heard from the Middle East, things look just basically horrible over there. Yet, the market's hanging in there pretty well. And I think that's because we've had several of these crises and conflicts between Israel and Hamas that led to ceasefires pretty quickly. This one looks like it's going to linger. And yet the price of oil hasn't really shot up. But I'm excited.
The price of oil has shot up, but again, not as crazy as we thought. It's up like 4%, which is kind of reasonable given the attack that happened.
Accentuating the positives here in terms of what the market's focusing on, and that's as you said, it's earnings. I think it's very likely that when all the earnings come in, that the third quarter is going to be at an all-time record high for S&P 500 earnings, which is pretty impressive all in all. Since the Godot recession, the most widely anticipated recession of all time, just has been a no-show so far.
So, Ed, though, think about how do you think about those earnings? And I know it's just impossible to put these things together with what's happening in the Middle East and what you think the larger geopolitical implications are, and therefore for the broader market. So we could have amazing earnings, but it's not even just what's happening now. Obviously, stock prices are looking out, call it 12 months, 18 months out. Where are we then? And how does this situation factor in? Recognizing, interestingly, at least from the academic studies that I've seen, and just, you look at charts over the years,
right.
With the exception of what was taking place in Israel in 1973, for the most part, when there have been problems in the Middle East, they have not impacted the stock market as negatively as you might imagine they would.
Correct. Well, I think.
And Andrew's right on that. I didn't know that problems in the Middle East historically have not actually affected the stock market as much as we thought it was going to be, which is why last week when the market went up, it was actually in line with history.
The obvious example of when the Middle East really did have a tremendous impact on the global economy and certainly on the stock market was back in the 70s when we had two energy shocks in 1973, and that was related to a war between Israel and the Arab states. And then in 1979, when the Iran Revolution occurred, oil prices soared a lot more than they've increased so far since the summer. And as a result, I think the market is looking over the next 12 months and concluding that this too shall pass. One way or another, the situation will be stabilized. And if that's the case, then the outlook for 2024 is probably pretty good.
Okay, but here's the thing, prior to a week and a half ago, where was it a different debate about not whether things would putting what was happening in Israel aside, because it hadn't happened yet. There was just a fundamental debate about whether we were headed towards a recession, how deep the recession would be, and whether, frankly, 2024 or 2025 actually wasn't that it was going to be positive or stable, it was going to be bad. I mean, that was, I think there was a lot of people that were concerned about that.
Sure. Well, look, one of these days a recession is going to happen. The business cycle hasn't been, forever banned. And I do think that the outlook for now is pretty good. I mean, the economy has proven to be remarkably resilient. It's true that we've seen this tremendous increase in short-term rates and the bond yield, and yet the consumer continues to spend. There's still a lot of fiscal policy stimulus in the pipelines. Companies are investing in artificial intelligence and so on. And as you know, we had a really strong GDP during the third quarter, which is why earnings are probably going to be at a record high. So I think the economy has proven that it can actually live with 4.5% to 5% bond yields. Obviously, if we go a lot higher than that, Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan has been saying, these are extremely dangerous times. And yet his bank reported tremendous upside surprise earnings in the third quarter.
Now, what's really interesting here is basically what he's saying. Stock market open in about 2 minutes. Thank you all for being here. Is that, look, before this Israeli sort of war and attack, everyone was saying that, the market's going to collapse. Things are going to be bad. It's going to be really tough. And now we're kind of recognizing not only did a Middle Eastern attack kind of shock the markets to remembering that like America can get through anything and stocks are resilient and that even if oil prices go up, we will be okay. But also this idea of the fact that 4.4 to 4.5% range on the 10-year, that's reasonable because it doesn't offer that much liquidity into the markets if you're getting 4.5 from a 10-year, right? So it keeps it kind of stable, but it's also not giving you like 6 or 7% to the point where that much liquidity is ripping from the markets. So after a pretty dramatic attack and shock in the Middle East and those yields coming down to a kind of sweet spot of 4.5, 4.6, the market's kind of recognizing if earnings are going to be good, which it seems in all indications so far, all earnings have been pretty damn good. I mean, the only earnings that have sucked has been Pfizer, and that's because there's not any COVID vaccine demand. If earnings can sustain themselves and the 10-year is giving you 4.5%, the market can continue to rally in a broader way that doesn't really depend on bond yields having to come down dramatically to where they were during COVID levels in order for equities to go up, which actually might be the most healthy way to have the economy continue to flourish. All right, here we go. It is October 16th, 2023, 9:30 a.m. Thank you all for being here. The stock market is now open. Wake your ass up. Here we go. Let's get into it. Another exciting week for the equity markets. Tesla, 250. Tesla will be having earnings on Wednesday. We will be live for Tesla earnings after hours. $249 right now, down 0.53%. Palantir, 1710, down 1.5%. Palantir taking a dip, likely because I think people are selling off and taking some profits. Honestly, Palantir is up a lot over the past week, so I think it makes sense that people are taking some profits, or at least institutions. That's why it's down. But if we see any evidence of increased demand or any relationship between the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, and Palantir, I think it's going to be similar to Ukraine and Palantir. We are probably going to see that defense premium momentum continue to come up. It is still up from 1540 last week at 1714, and it could continue to spike back to 18 later in the day. But that is why Palantir is down a little bit. Probably just people taking some profits and selling the news. RTX 7388 up 0.85%. That's Raytheon. Lockheed Martin up 0.4%, 443. Walgreens is down 0.28%. Square 4396 up 1.83% on the day. Truist will be reporting earnings in 2 days. That's going to be a big one for the regional banks. $28.84 right now, up 1.5%. Bank of America 2704. Bank of America reporting earnings tomorrow. We will know, I believe, in the pre-markets. I might be wrong. It might be after hours, but in the pre-markets, we will know what's going on with Bank of America, 2703. This is a stock that is heavily owned by Berkshire Hathaway. I believe 7% of Berkshire Hathaway's portfolio, Big Daddy Buffett, owns this stock. So they've got to do a decent job, and maybe Buffett ends up disclosing that he bought some of the dip. Citigroup at 4194, Wells Fargo 4165, JP Morgan 149. The banks continuing to do well from Friday. Costco is up at $569.67. Costco tends to do well in Q4 because they sell a lot of turkeys and they sell a lot of pumpkin pie. So we got Thanksgiving coming up. It's crazy that we're about to be in Thanksgiving season. That's just insane to think that we're about to be done with Halloween and Thanksgiving. But Costco is definitely going to continue to do well in Q4 just based on those two factors. Again, remember, their report that came out last quarter said that inflation is actually not a big deal, and we're seeing deflation in certain scenarios and disinflation in other parts of their supply chain. So Costco should be a metric to track in Q3 in terms of how they're doing. L3 Harris 177, Delta 3427, S&P 500. Look at that, up 0.61% on the day, 43.4. Not bad at all for $434. Bitcoin, let's take a look at that. Bitcoin seems to be up today. Bitcoin, where are we at on Bitcoin? Wow. Oh my. Look at that. 2934. 29,450. So today it hit a high of 29,915. It was $45 away from 30,000. That's incredible. On Friday, it was 26,100. So it's basically up $3,000 in the past, up 7% basically in the past 2 weeks, or in the past, 2 days. Wow. Congrats to Bitcoin shareholders. The ETF got approved. Well, I don't think the ETF got approved, but Gary Gensler didn't do one of those things where he said the ETF is not getting approved. They didn't campaign to get the ETF not approved on Friday, which was their last day, I think, to get it approved. That's a massive green candle. Look at that. Remember, Bitcoin going up is not just good for Bitcoin shareholders. It's good for Square shareholders. It's good for Coinbase shareholders. Let's go to Coin, actually. We'll see if that's up. Yeah, look at Coinbase up 8%. This is the fun part about being in the crypto world, because when it's down, it's annoying. But when it comes up, it comes up. It's good for Coinbase. It's good for Square. It's good for Rite. It's good for Marathon. It's good for Robinhood. There's $3 billion of Bitcoin exposure on Robinhood. So let's take a look at some of those Bitcoin stocks. Riot, look at that, up 10% on the day. Look at that. Absolutely incredible. Marathon up 13% on the day. Bro, a 7% gain in Bitcoin makes all these stocks green. That's incredible. Is Robinhood getting any love? Even Robinhood, that had some pretty bad tailwind or headwinds over the past couple of days, is up almost 1%, likely because Bitcoin is up. That's incredible. That's great. So congrats to anyone who owns Marathon, Riot, Coinbase, Bitcoin. Let's check out CleanSpark. CleanSpark should be up today as well. Ah, look at CleanSpark, up 13%. Dude, when Bitcoin does well, all of these companies do well. What about PayPal? Does PayPal get any love from here? PayPal at 5609. PayPal continuing to be dead because, we should change PayPal's name to Pay Enemy, because it doesn't feel like a pal to me. A pal is a guy that helps you out, maybe lends you some money sometimes, maybe gives you an interesting business idea. It's like, hey, pal, you want to start this business? Okay, pal, let's think about this. PayPal is not really sounding like a pal over the past couple weeks, to be honest. It's really not being friendly to me. So we see PayPal pretty much stuck. But Coinbase, Riot, Marathon, Robinhood, CleanSpark, all of these bad boys are up. Palantir 1726, up a little bit, down 0.61%, but up from 1714. What else do we have here? Google, let's check on that. Google hit 52-week highs, 52-week highs yesterday. Not all-time highs, but 52-week highs on Friday. Google 139.81. So below that 140 level, but still green for the day. Netflix at 357. If we take a look at Amazon at 130, 0.86 down from 132. And then we have ARM at 52, up above the open price, IPO price. NVIDIA 456, that's green. Walt Disney 84, that's green. Shopify 51, that's green. And SoFi 818. So SoFi is down from 867 as of last quarter, but it is 818. We have earnings in 14 days on SoFi. That's going to be a big one to see if they can beat on member growth and if they can have some decent student loan originations. That wouldn't be that bad. Crossroads says it's PayPal. Crossroads, I hate you. That joke was better than mine. PayPal is better. Or pay less, or just pay me. When is PayPal reporting earnings? I think November 2nd. November 2nd or November 3rd, one of those. One of those, it'll be up there. So let's see. Kevin says it's a new week. Let's crush, boys. I agree. It's a new week. Let's crush indeed. Pal or Colin Powell. Basically. Didn't SoFi get a price upgrade? Yeah, I think it did. I think it's like 12 or 13 bucks over the weekend. It got some price upgrade, but it wasn't, that dramatic. Okay, I want to go to this quick headline before we get back to the macro, because this, as silly as it is, you guys are going to think it's silly that I'm sharing this, but it is important. Taylor Swift. The reason this matters is because it means the economy for the consumer is still doing well. The Taylor Swift Eras Tour is the highest grossing domestic concert film ever. It opened between 95 and 97 million during the opening weekend. Around 4.8 million people were estimated to have attended the film, averaging a ticket price of $20.75. Not only did the tour itself make about, I think it was close to a couple $1 billion or something like that, but the movie now is making about $95 million in the opening day. To put it in perspective, Michael Jackson's This Is It, if you remember that movie that I watched on opening weekend, it actually came out on my birthday in 2009, October 27th, that brought in $75 million in the box office. And remember, the box office was way more valuable during 2009 than AMC is right now. So this is pretty incredible. And again, the reason this is important is because if you can market correctly, there are going to be consumers that have the money to spend. They're willing to buy. And as a result of them willing to buy, that is ultimately going to be good for the economy, good for the market, good for economic mobility, and good for a lot of people that are interested in the stock market going up. Brian says, I saw it this weekend. I stopped counting the times they showed the SoFi sign at 20. And that's another reason I brought it up. SoFi basically got free advertising to 4.8 million people over the weekend. I would be shocked if some people did not sign up for SoFi because the concert tour was at the SoFi Stadium. So if it was at the SoFi Stadium, well, SoFi right now, number 39 in the finance charts as we look at it on iOS. 4.5 million people seeing your name plastered 20 times during an hour and a half show. I mean, you're going to have some people that are interested about what is SoFi. Did you see the SNL skit on Swifties? I didn't see that yet. I know that they did one, but I didn't get to see it yet. I did see they had Travis Kelce in there, and they had a little bit of fun with Taylor Swift. But that's good, man. We need to see even economic mobility like that. I mean, look, Barbie and Oppenheimer were big catalysts, I think, for just consumer spending in the summer as well. Even though I think Oppenheimer was not the best movie. But, it got people out into the theater. I went to the theater for the first time in 4 years just to watch Oppenheimer. Probably shouldn't have. I didn't think it was that good of a movie. But, Taylor Swift is another catalyst that's bringing people out. They're getting people excited, and people want to spend. And that's good for people want to spend. Go Taylor, I guess. Look, man, she did her thing. She did her thing. All right, because we got Bank of America coming out tomorrow, let's take a look around bank deposits. One of the biggest problems that people are seeing for bank earnings is that the cost of deposits are going higher. Bank of America reporting tomorrow. We saw JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, and Citi basically said yes, the cost of deposits are going higher. It's not as bad as we think. Here's Barclays' Jason Goldberg speaking around bank deposits and some of those concerns continuing to be there. And we'll see if that affects any of the big banks reporting this week.
Jason Goldberg. He is Barclays' senior equity analyst. Jason, let's talk about what's happening with the banks. We got better than expected results, I think, from every one of the banks that reported on Friday. Most of them closed the day higher in a down market. But it has not been a great year for the banks. You can go back to March and look at all of the concerns around the financial sector. You can look at the idea that we keep thinking we're headed for a recession and that you're going to see bad loans that are popping up. Where do things stand right now with these banks?
Yeah, no, certainly. You look at year-to-date relative performance versus the S&P 500. We have data back 80 years, and this will be the worst year on record at the year end of today. So certainly, It has not been an easy path for the group. However, you look at Friday's results, and both net interest income and provision for credit losses were actually both better than expected. So I think a lot of the concerns around deposits that earlier in the year following the failure of Silicon Valley have certainly calmed down a bit. And while certainly we look for loan losses to continue to increase, they're going up at a measured pace, I think, allowing banks to kind of absorb it given their current earnings capacity.
You hear comments like Jamie Dimon, though, who's one of the best risk managers out there. And look, he's cautious about it. He's always cautious, I would say, to some extent. But how much of that is warranted? How much do you worry about some of these stocks and what's coming?
No, we certainly do. Banks are a reflection of the economy, and there's a lot of uncertainties given what's going on in the world right now. But as long as the Fed can engineer their soft landing, as several predict, we think this group will continue to remain soundly profitable and continue to grow, book value and recover kind of off the lows.
Okay. And so what he's saying there really is that banks should be fine, even though the increase of deposits is going up, their net interest income should be going up as well. So they should be able to use some of that to leverage and solve some of the issues going on with banks. Bank of America tomorrow, that's going to be a big one, basically telling us, hey, is this guy right? Do we actually think banks are going to be okay? Or are banks going to, not do the best this quarter? And since the big banks did well, you would imagine Bank of America does okay. Palantir, $16.95. It's down below $17. We're seeing it down about 2.53%. So we're seeing it go down a bit more. And on top of that, now I know why Bitcoin is up so much. The spot ETF is officially approved. That's like official. The SEC has just approved BlackRock's Bitcoin spot ETF. So that is why we're really seeing the momentum in Bitcoin and some of these other crypto stocks. So just putting that out there for those that may not have known that. The SEC has officially approved BlackRock's Bitcoin spot ETF. That means there's going to be more people buying, more institutions buying Bitcoin, more people having exposure to Bitcoin. Just like a company joining the S&P 500, more people are buying it, getting exposure, which means the stock is probably going to go up or the price is going to go up. Palantir now at 1682, down 3%. All right, so we're seeing a nasty nosedive right here. Someone's selling, either a group of people or a lot of people. People are definitely selling right now, and they're taking their profits on Palantir. Volume is 6.57 million in the first 12 minutes of the market being open. As you can see, there's a lot of green on the left-hand side of the screen for Bitcoin and crypto stocks. And then you've got Palantir down 1684. Then you've got some more red. SoFi, Enphase at 122, Instacart 25, S&P 500 green at 433, and Shopify 51. Why is Palantir selling off? Now, here's two theories on this. Number one, obviously it had run up pretty dramatically, and the market's taking some of their profits, which I think is the most likely scenario why the stock is falling off. The market taking some of their profits. Palantir's up. The market's like, look, it was up a lot, so we're going to, take our profits. The other reason, and this one I think is less likely, but this is one that I saw being floated around a couple of, over the weekend. Some people might not like that they've doubled down on their support on Israel, right? So if you're just new to the live stream, Palantir put out an advertisement yesterday, full page ad on the New York Times of 4 words: Palantir stands with Israel. Those were the words. So there were a bunch of people I saw in my comments when I posted that saying I'm selling my entire position tomorrow. Now, look, a couple of people saying they're going to sell their position. That's whatever. Like, that's not really going to move the stock. If there were any larger institutional, investment firms saying we don't want to support this company anymore, then you can imagine a more aggressive decline. I don't think that's the reason, quite frankly. I think individual retail investors probably sold their stock if they didn't want to keep up with Palantir, but I don't think it's necessarily the reason for why the company is declining. One interesting thing I saw, there was a marketing manager who used to work for Palantir. He followed me on Twitter. That's how I knew who he was. And he commented under the post that he's appalled that Palantir is supporting Israel. Now, he worked into marketing in the Middle East, and based on his name, it looked like he was probably Muslim. I mean, like, just quite frankly, his name looked like he was probably Muslim. And so I went on his LinkedIn, and he's no longer working at Palantir. He quit August 2023, but one could argue that, maybe this what he was seeing was a reason why he quit. So there are definitely people, this is something to think about, that work in the Middle East for Palantir. They do have a business there that are not liking Palantir's stance on Israel, because in general, the Middle East is not the most supportive of Israel. I mean, Saudi Arabia and Israel were just starting to get to peace negotiations over the past couple of months before this attack kind of ruined the possibility for those to happen. And the Saudis have reaffirmed over the weekend that they still want to have peace with Israel. So hopefully that will end up happening. But not everyone agrees with what Palantir did. And as a result of that, we are seeing potentially some momentum here in volatility in stock. Again, I think this is more so the stock just got really high at 17, 18 bucks and started to fall down a little bit. Not really this whole thing around the Israel support is the reason why Palantir is down. But we are seeing it down 1675, 3.5. Now, here's what happens. Palantir was at 1840, right? Everyone was happy. Everyone was excited. Everyone was up thousands of dollars. Their leaps were printing, yada, yada, yada. Now it's at 1675. And what happens from a retail perspective is people just saw $2 worth of gains basically go away. So if you had 5,000 shares, you're down $10,000 on your gains, right? Because from 16 to 18, let's just use easy numbers to round it up. That's 2 times 5, $10,000. So you're down those 10,000. Now your question is, well, if it goes to 14, I'm down another 10,000 if I have 5,000 shares because my gains are going to go down. So retail starts asking themselves a question. This happens every time. I've been through it. You guys have probably been through it. Do I want to sell and capture some of my profits I have now and at least get something before it falls down even more, if you think it's going to fall down even more? And that may be the compounding effect to see Palantir decline even more because retail decides to sell it off. On top of that, it may be too expensive for institutions to get back in. Maybe it's cheaper for institutions to get back in at 16. It really depends. I think below 15 is, my buy price. I don't know how every institution feels about it, but that is the question that institutions and retail are going to have to ask right now to see where it goes from here. Vincent says, do you think we will hear anything on the NHS deal this week? I have no clue. The NHS said by mid-October, they will be telling us if things are happening or not. It's mid-October. It's literally the day after mid-October, October 16th. And we have no idea. So look, I think we should get an announcement pretty soon. If we don't, that would be annoying. But I think we will. And once we get that official announcement, we will know if it happens. I think we're getting the deal. There was some article over the weekend of Quantexta, which is some company in the UK, saying, look, we can do it better than the Americans. I don't think that's going to end up happening. So I think we'll get it. The question is just when we're ultimately going to be able to get it. Kyle says if it comes down on low volume, it's not too bad. Yeah, I agree. But we are seeing that decline right now. Palantir at 1683, down 3% on the day. All right, let's get an update on what's going on with Israel and Hamas. The IDF is preparing for a possible continued escalation. Let's just get an update on this from here. And then after this, I want to take a look at why defense stocks are potentially going to do a lot better, including Palantir, because of everything that's going on in terms of restocking. So let's look at this and then we'll go from there.
A spokesman for the Israeli Defense Forces, Lieutenant Colonel Peter Lerner. Thank you very much for being on with us this morning. Given what I just read, the reporting about Iran watching closely to see the next move by Israel, how do you work on a response while hopefully not creating a wider war? Is that in the thought process here?
Good morning to you. I'd like to add perhaps to your discussion with Richard about the Arab world and how people are actually looking at this. Hamas is the governing body. It's a terrorist organization, but it is the government of Gaza. And the Yahya Sinwar, the prime minister, who is the mastermind of the massacre, he instructed and orchestrated the diabolical attack against Israel and our communities on the 7th of October. So I'd like to add, I think that there is also a general disdain and a letdown by the Arab leaders towards Hamas for deciding to go to war against Israel without taking into consideration the repercussions. I think it's basic decency against the butchery of Hamas that people are saying, why do we need to bend over backwards for this terrorist organization after they did this to their own people? And to relate back to your question, of course, Kiev has recruited some 300,000 reservists in order to be prepared for any eventuality. If the government instructs us to mobilize on the ground, we will be prepared. We are currently striking Hamas extensively from the air. We are taking out their command and control positions. We're taking out their leaders, the terrorists that actually infiltrated into the Gaza, into the communities of southern Israel. And we are determined to make sure the Gaza Strip can never, ever be used as a staging ground for massacres and butchery in Israel ever again.
To add a little bit of context, and then we'll get back to what I heard over the weekend, one of the main concerns with what Israel is doing on the Gaza Strip in terms of getting people to leave from the north to the south in order to continue out these strikes is that there will be a further occupation of Gaza if Israel is successful in eliminating Hamas, right? That is one of the major concerns. From everything I've heard from every spokesperson and every defense general, et cetera, that is not what they want to do. They do not want to be responsible for governing 2.2 million Palestinian citizens. Because either you take over the entire land and you expel those Palestinian citizens and you make it Jewish Israeli territory, which the international community would, I think, never let them do, nor do I think they want to do, or you incorporate those 2 million people into the land of Israel, and you make Gaza turn into Israel, right? It's no longer Palestine. They don't want to do that. The Palestinians don't want to let them do that. And I don't think they want to be responsible for having 2.2 million people enter what is quote unquote now Israel if they occupy Gaza. If those people don't believe that that strip of land is part of Israel, if they don't believe any part of the land is part of Israel. So the idea that they want to occupy Gaza, I think, is not necessarily correct, because they would have to deal with 2.2 million people that don't like Israel. But they do want to eliminate Hamas. So it seems like that is their core mission right now.
Lieutenant Colonel, let's talk about the north. We just noted that some towns there have been evacuated in northern Israel, near the Lebanon border. What's the level of activity you're seeing from Hezbollah, and what's the level of concern that you have that the violence there, so far limited to a few skirmishes, but that violence could really grow?
So the skirmishes have been in an escalating mode over the last few days, and indeed there were several anti-tank guided missiles fired at forces and even at civilians along the border. So we have, together with our defense ministry, instructed anybody living within the 2-kilometer boundary from the border itself be evacuated. As you rightly pointed out, that's 28 communities. And that goes to show we take civilians out of the line of fire, where our enemies are bent on our destruction and utilize their own civilians to put them in the line of fire. Now, we have, as I said, the 300,000 reservists that have been recruited are also positioned in the north. So we have strengthened the frontier with Hezbollah on the border with Lebanon. And we are very concerned about the prospects of a conflict with Hezbollah. I would say that it appears that the whole escalation that we've seen over the last few days is under the direction of Iran, which are interested in challenging Israel, challenging the IDF, on the front with Hamas, because they are so invested in the tools of terrorism in over the years, whether it's in funding or in training or in equipment. Everything has its roots back in Iran, and that's why they are looking out for their proxies up on the front. So we are determined to destroy Hamas. We are determined that once they broke the rules of the game on Saturday, October 7th, by penetrating our border, butchering our people, abducting 199 confirmed abductions into the Gaza Strip, and effectively opening the war. They chose to go to war with us. We will win this war.
Now, what's really interesting about this, that's also, I think, important to understand, is why Egypt is not opening up their borders, right? There is this thing called the Muslim Brotherhood, and there are a lot of fully Muslim states, meaning they're governed literally by Sunni Shia law in the Middle East. There is one border on the Gaza Strip called the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. That is the only current viable way outside of the densely populated area that is Gaza. So what I'm reading and what I'm seeing is Cairo, which is in Egypt, is afraid that if they opened up their borders and there would be this exodus of Palestinian refugees, probably in the tunes of hundreds of thousands that are crossing that border into Egypt, where they would be sheltered, they would have food, they would have water, etc. Like there would be a humanitarian way for Egypt to have those people come in. Essentially, there would be a refugee crisis there, right? That there would be no chance for a Palestinian state to happen again. That is the argument that Egypt is giving to the international community for why they're not opening up their border. Their argument is if they open up their border and all these people come into Egypt, they're never going to leave and go back to Palestine, or there's never going to be a chance for the actual Palestinian state to exist. I think this is the dumbest argument I've heard in my entire life. Quite frankly, that's my opinion. You can agree, you can disagree. And the reason I think it's the dumbest argument is because Israel is going to go into Gaza. It's not stopping. They are going to have a ground offensive. So if you don't open up your borders, whatever ideological fantasy you have about some state never being formed, those people are going to die. It's just that simple. And so at the end of the day, either you open the border and remember the United Kingdom, Lithuania, Poland, all of them opened their borders to accept Ukrainian refugees, because even though they want Ukraine to have its own sovereignty and land, They weren't like, oh, well, if we open our borders, then there's no chance for Ukraine to ever affirm its own land because Russia will continue to invade. No, they opened their borders because people were dying. And they were like, hey, let's get some people into our borders. Let's be good partners of the global community, and let's make sure people don't die. So in my opinion, if there's a lot of Muslim countries in the Middle East that should be looking out for their Muslim brothers right now in terms of the Palestinians, and the fact that there will be a Palestinian state later, that's a question you worry about after this is all over. You don't let people die in the meantime just because you have this fantasy of what things should be. So we will see. I mean, we will see what ends up happening. I would be surprised if by the end of the week, Egypt did not open their border. I mean, I would really be surprised. So far, they're working with the United States to open their border for United States citizens. There are Palestinian Americans that are using that Rafah crossing border to come back to America, but there's not any actual opening for regular Palestinian citizens to come through. And like, that's just shocking to me. Like, I think we all can agree that at the end of the day, you can't have a religion govern all these countries and then you're turning away those people because of some territorial land dispute when, like, just from a religious perspective, you help people. Every religion says you help people in their time of need, and you help it at your own detriment. That is like one of the objective ways to understand the nature of morality. You have one piece of bread, someone's hungry, you give them half. That is the way that most religions articulate what it means to be a human being. And the idea that they're not doing that, I mean, that's really sad right now to see. So we will end up seeing what happens. But again, if that continues to escalate, there will be further need for companies like Palantir, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, potentially in the context of defense software and defense hardware being procured for those companies. And helping the poor, almsgiving is literally one of Islam's 5 pillars. Yeah, it is shocking to me that it is really shocking to me that it's not opening. It was, I mean, yeah, well, and people can say, oh, geopolitically, it doesn't make sense. But these are people that have nowhere to go. So I don't care about geopolitics at that situation. At this point, it's like, you could blame Israel. Well, Israel shouldn't be forcing them. It's like, all right, well, that's happening. So it's like, you can keep arguing back and forth. Israel shouldn't be doing it. It's happening. And if it's happening, then something's got to happen, right? Like, and if Israel has the support of all Western countries to be able to do what they need to do because they're going back on their 9/11, then at some level, those people need somewhere to go. And you would imagine some other countries help them. NASDAQ at 13,475, Ford at 1189. GM also reports earnings this week, so we're going to see a little bit more on that. NVIDIA at 453. Palantir recovering a little bit, 1687, down only 2.8% now, not down 3.4%. Bitcoin, 27,977, so it fell from 29,915, down 1,000 points, but still up 3% on the day. Bitcoin doing well. And S&P 500 continuing to raise higher at, where is the S&P? At 434. It is quite astonishing. The S&P is continuing to maintain this momentum, even though we're seeing a lot of volatility. Obviously, the 10-year continuing to go higher. Gas prices also going up. The market not really choosing to sell off. Remember that 10% correction to the 200-day moving average that we saw? It was enough for the market, I think, to get excited to buy stocks again. And if it's true, then that means this end of year hopefully is going to be better. If not, then the end of year might not be as good as we expected. Apple at 177 as well, 177.50 right now on Apple. The principle here is that Arabs consider Palestine a country and they refuse 100% that Palestinians leave their own country. Yeah. And look, that is one of the reasons why they're not opening up their borders. It's just a question where, like, is it time for those borders to open up just a little bit? But we will see. Look, we will see. Maybe there's other reasons for why they're not opening the borders that I don't know. I'm thinking from a pure, humanitarian, like, moral perspective. There may be other reasons I'm not taking into account. But that is, what's going on right now in that area. QQQ at 367, down from 375. Airbnb, this one's just been a mess since it went up to 140 on that S&P 500 inclusion note. So let's check out LULU. How did a LULU do in the market open? We forgot about these guys. Wow, up 9%. Look at that. If you can sell a sweater that you paid $10 for $120, you can make some money. You can make some money. Lululemon up 10% on the day because of S&P 500 inclusion, out or 8.77% on the day. That's where we're seeing it up. Google at 140, Amazon 132, PayPal 56.46. PayPal actually up 1.27%. Not bad. Their earnings November 2nd. Robin it up 0.22%. Some of these other stocks, Coinbase now up 1%. It was up 7% in the pre-market. So as Bitcoin comes down, some of these Bitcoin companies, miners, start to come down as well. And let's look at Truist. Where's Truist? Truist at 28.54 as well. All right. Palantir at 16.85. That's what we got on the day. Sachin, you're joining right as we're ending, but thank you for being here. Yeah, that is pretty much it for me. So it's going to be really interesting over the next week. We've got Bank of America. We've got Goldman Sachs. We've got Morgan Stanley. We've got Tesla. We've got Netflix. Wednesday is going to be a jam-packed day. I'll be here after hours. We'll be covering Tesla and Netflix. And we'll see what we got. We'll see if some of the Finance Junkie crew can come with me. We have Finance Junkies again today at 7 p.m. I couldn't make it last week, but we will be here today. Let's do the word of the day. And let's do that for today. And then we will be out. Another episode of Palantir Daily. That'll be out a little bit later today. I think you guys are liking the format of just doing that one episode a day. I've gotten a lot of DMs from people saying it's so much better for them to just click on one video, find it, consume it, and keep going from there. So we'll keep doing that one video a day. We've got a ton of news. We'll jam pack it all together and we'll go from there. All right. The word of the day, which is really interesting, is multiverse. Of course, the multiverse. A collection of linked fictional settings composed of multiple alternate dimensions looking for timelines, different timelines. I don't know if Zuck's picked the word of the day today, but the multiverse, folks. Sometimes it feels like we're living in the multiverse. If you see some of the footage that came out this weekend, bro, Hamas put out a marketing video. Like literally there was like motivational music behind their marketing in terms of their training, because they're saying we're ready for Israel to come like in, we're going to beat them. And I was like, we're living in a multiverse. Like a terrorist organization is putting out a motivational marketing video on Twitter. Like I was just like, this is insane. This is absolutely insane what we're living in right now. So the concept of multiverse challenges our traditional understandings of reality. As the art exhibition showcased various artworks depicting alternative worlds, we tapped into the imaginative realms of the multiverse. Sometimes it definitely feels like we're living in the multiverse. All right. That's it. That is it for me. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you all for being here for the Market Open. We'll see you again tomorrow, 8:45 a.m. We'll see how the market does for the rest of the day and see if we get some recovery on stocks like Palantir and we get continued momentum in some of the other stocks. Palantir right now at 1680 ending at the Market Open. And we'll have Palantir Daily come out a little bit later today discussing everything that went on over the weekend. All right. That's it. Thank you all for being here. I will see you tomorrow. Have a great start to your week. Have a great Monday, and I'll see you later. Bye, everybody. Have a good one.